Hello, and welcome back to my digital classroom. Today we're going to be talking about The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is a speculative fiction dystopian novel taking place in a not-so-distant future where a nuclear disaster or a chemical disaster has resulted in a world where fertility rates have dropped exponentially, and there's all this issue with trying to figure out how to solve that problem and save the human race because population rates are dropping. The Handmaid's Tale is not a story for the faint of heart. This is a very gut-clenching story. It's heartbreaking, it's terrifying, and it all exists in this realm of possibility where Margaret Atwood, as a rule, only took things from history that had actually happened because she did not want her female's perspective of a dystopian novel to be written off as just outlandishly unrealistic. So she rooted a lot of what happens in the story in historical fact. So in the novel, we have our main character and narrator, Offred, who is a handmaid in the Republic of Gilead, which is what the United States have come to be called after a religious fundamentalist group has successfully overthrown the United States government, and they are seeking to regress the nation to a simpler time that relies very heavily on the Christian theology, believing that the Bible is an authoritative text and is where they get a lot of the answers to explain what they're doing and all of the changes that they're making in this new nation, specifically focusing on women and how women should be treated. So they create this caste system where women fall into play, where they have to have some kind of purpose. So you have the government officials, the commanders, they have wives. Men who are of a lower rank will have econo wives, and then upper class men, rich men, get to have a Martha, which is like a household servant. She does a lot of the cleaning, the laundry, things like that. And you also have the aunts who work at the Red Center or the Rachel and Leah Center. That's where handmaids are sent to be trained, but essentially brainwashed so that they can take in their new role and their new place in the world. And of course that leaves the handmaids. So the handmaids are fertile women who have been subscripted into this sort of sexual slavery where they are assigned to a commander in a commanding house who has a wife, and the wife is for whatever reason not reproducing, and so they're assigned a handmaid, and once a month there is this ceremonial rape that takes place where the commander is trying to reproduce with the handmaid, and if the handmaid is able to successfully bear and birth a child, it would go to the wife, and then the handmaid would then be moved to another location, another commander, and try to give birth again. With all of the knowledge of how reproduction is really difficult in this time, it is not likely that very many handmaids will be able to bring forth multiple children, and if so, it's often a very difficult pregnancy and difficult labor. So all of this is going on, and every woman plays their role, and as part of the caste system there are all of these governmental spies. So women are encouraged to and expected to report on one another if they think that someone is doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and that kind of creates a bit of a witch hunt situation similar to Salem, where if someone doesn't like someone else, they can say that they're doing things they're not supposed to be doing even if they aren't. And it creates an environment of distrust and of constant paranoia where you feel like you're always being watched, up to the point where you almost feel like your thoughts are being monitored. And so we have our narrator, Offred, talking about her experience, and we get the benefit of her thoughts and her internal monologue, her internal thinking, and how she's able to work her way through this world and keep her sanity. A really cool quote that stood out to me was, "Sanity is a valuable possession. I hoard it the way people once hoarded money. I save it so I'll have enough when the time comes." And that's a really awesome quote that lets you know a little bit about Offred and how she doesn't give up. She doesn't just fall into this living husk of a woman. She has her own thought processes, she has her own ideas, she has her own goals, and part of that is keeping her sanity so that she can continue to observe the world around her, take in the information that she needs, and hopefully use all of this to her benefit if she's given an opportunity to either run or fight or be part of some sort of resistance, which at one point in the text she is given that opportunity and she does try to take advantage of it. Now, there are so many resources on this text and so many knowledgeable people who have spoken about it that could do way more justice than I can in this short video, but I just have to say that this is a book that when I read it, I thought to myself, why is it I have not read this book before? It's exactly the kind of thing that I like. I really like dystopian fiction. I love strong female characters, and it read so easily. It was such a grip your seat kind of read, because at every moment in every chapter you're kind of worried about Offred, because any kind of bad thing can happen to her, and there's really no explanation needed. Min have such complete control that her commander could have her sent away. Her the commander's wife, Serena Joy, does not make it a secret that she really does not like Offred, and so she poses a constant concern that if she gets to a point where she just does not want Offred around, she'll be sent away. Offred is not their first handmaiden in this house, and the first one met a pretty grisly end, and Serena Joy may feel as though she has the power to get rid of Offred. And so Offred lives in a constant state of fear that the Marthas might tell on her, that Serena Joy might find a way to get rid of her, that her own commander might get tired of her. And then there's also the gardener / driver, who is a male of a lower rank who works for the commander, and he represents his own forms of confusion and danger. So I'm not going to give you too many details because I don't want to spoil it. I do want you to read it. If this is not a long book. This is not a difficult read. The only thing that might be difficult about it is the time jumping. So in terms of how that exists, we have Offred telling her story from a point in the future, and she's looking back on everything. She says at one point, this is a reconstruction. Everything is a reconstruction. She is trying to remember her experience to the best of her ability so that she can present it in a chronological order, but there are a lot of flashbacks to the time before that explain and lead up to how the United States fell and became the Republic of Gilead. So that can sometimes get confusing, but overall it's a pretty straightforward read, and the narrator wants you to understand her, and so she makes a concerted effort to explain things clearly. And it's just the fact that so many things that she's having to explain to you are so outside of the realm of what we would consider normal. So many things in terms of patriarchy and misogyny have been taken to their utmost extremes, and it really makes you uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable as a woman reading this text, knowing how our current society is viewing things like Planned Parenthood and the rights of women, the voices of women, and how women can bring forth information and just be discarded by men who don't think that they're credible, or they don't think that their experience really matters and shouldn't be given a hefty amount of weight. That, to me, is what the final chapter of the text really illustrated, is that a woman can bring forth her story and her pain and her struggle and her experience, and it can be interpreted by men, it can be, organized by men, and then be presented by men to not be good enough in some way. And you'll kind of get those vibes as you read all the way through. But it can be very, very frustrating, because at many times in the novel, Offred is treated like a child. She's talked to as though she is this impudent little girl, and that she wants things that she can't have, so she's kind of like a spoiled brat, and the commander is giving her all of these indulgences, and he kind of enjoys playing the good cop versus the bad cop. And there are some people who might think that the commander is a nice guy or a savior figure, but to me, he just disgusted me the entire time. I did not feel as though he was trying to really create any form of fondness and romance with Offred, even though the show kind of gives you that impression. It felt like to me that he was taking something that he already possessed entirely and trying to just enjoy it in new and exciting ways. It wasn't him talking to her as though she were a person, because there are so many instances when they're interacting that he thinks that she's just cute, or like the things that she asks for are silly and empty. He doesn't get brownie points from me. He doesn't. He does offer her some indulgences. He does offer her some luxuries that she would not have, and she shouldn't have according to the rules of the new law. But he doesn't do it from a place of kindness and empathy and romance and love. He does it from a position of power where he enjoys winding up his little plaything and seeing how it interacts in new environments. So to me, not a fan. And the last thing I want to touch on before finishing this video is the idea of the transitional generation. Offred has memories of the time before the Republic of Gilead, and so does every other adult functioning in this nation as it exists. And it's also not a secret, so the other nations of the world are aware of what's going on in Gilead, and no one is really intervening, and it makes everyone seem very complacent and very complicit in what's happening and all of the different sort of crimes against humanity that exist in this new nation. For example, African Americans are moved to colonies in the Midwest. The LGBT population tries to go underground very quickly as they realize things are changing fast. But if they are caught, they are sent to the colonies. And the colonies are kind of areas in the nation that are no longer habitable without causing extreme damage to the person. And so if you commit any kind of crime, if you're part of a minority religion, you're sent to the colonies. If you're an LGBT person, you're sent to the colonies. If you're someone who does not perform in the caste system as it is assigned to you, you're sent to the colonies. And so there is this threat of it could get worse. We could send you to interact with radioactive sludge, that you can live out there for a number of years, but it will be your undoing, it will be your demise. I point that out because I want to share this quote with you. Ignoring isn't the same as ignorance. You have to work at it. Everyone who allows this nation to exist as it does is actively ignoring everything that is happening. And it's not that they don't know better. Eventually, if this nation exists for generations, eventually it will be ignorance because they won't know better. They won't have known about the time before. And that's what the aunts kind of try to sell to the handmaids as this really weird interpretation of hope, is that this is difficult for you because you have memories, but future handmaids will be happy in their role because they won't know any better. And is that really a positive thing? Is ignorance better than ignoring, because ignorance being bliss? But if you're ignoring, you're having to work at making this a reality when it's clearly not a beneficial reality for everyone. The commander even says to Offred at one point, better never means better for everyone. It always means worse for some. So you have to ask yourself, who does this community benefit? It is white, powerful, older men who are a strict religious belief. And throughout history, those have been the sort of people who cause a lot of trouble for a lot of other people. And yet again, they're able to take control and crush everyone else under the boot of what they think is right and wrong and how they think the world should be run. Because it doesn't seem like a very effective system. A lot of the men are actually sterile, and that's partly why the women are unable to bear them children. But because it's a patriarchal system, you can't blame the men for what's going on, and the women are trapped in this system of being constantly blamed for everything and being these perpetual victims, because any person who tries to form any piece of rebellion is punished absolutely. They're either publicly executed or they're sent to the colonies. So there's not a lot of options. Offred even says, there wasn't a lot of choice, but there was some, and this is what I chose, referring to her being a handmaiden. So she chose to be a handmaiden as opposed to going to the colonies. Dystopian novels really make you think about what you have and how good you can have it, because things can always get worse, but it also is trying to teach you to recognize when a government is no longer working for the benefit of the majority of the people, and that even if you have the majority vote, you still need to consider minority individuals and women and LGBT people as human beings and not just try to write them off and get rid of them, as we saw in World War II, where if you have a master race who is just going to exterminate everyone that they don't approve of, some groups of people, like, there always needs to be a resistance. There always need to be people who are fighting for justice and for being humane and for trying to bring about the best aspects of humanity, because otherwise you end up with a dystopian that is not too far outside the realm of possibility. Let me know what you thought about the novel. I'm interested to see your thoughts, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for showing up, and I'll see you on the next one.